Hi, everybody, and I'm back. It seems like that everything is back up to normal again. Some weirdness having to do with our stream key. I guess Facebook decided to change everything because they just want to be difficult. So, fingers crossed that everything works. If it doesn't, then I'll get on the line with technical support and try to get that one ironed out. So, I do want to thank you guys for joining us this afternoon. Oh, it looks like we are live, so we are good to go. We are online. This is great. Now, I just want to let our Facebook and other audiences out there know that if you would like to give us a call here on the show to speak with us to get your free live reading, be sure to give us a call at area code 563-999-3070. We'll be here for the next hour until 4 o'clock Arizona or Mountain Time. So, Beretta, can you hear me? Are you on the line with me right now?
I'm still here, yes.
Perfect. So I just want to take a look at something on our YouTube stream that's kind of interesting. So yesterday, the big, hot garbage that people were talking about was this big eclipse energy that, that this is something that was going to happen. And if you can see on my chart, I have the arrowhead here pointed exactly where it needs to be. So you can see that that part of the chart. So there's the sun and there's the moon and there's a whole bunch of planets in between. So people try to, pass off that you're going to be affected by XYZ in this solar house that's affecting this sign and it's going to affect you and all of that. Well, I'm just here to change that narrative. Let's do something interesting. Let's have a red pill conversation. This is something that we do on this show. Red pill, for those of you who don't know, is very simply just, I'm going to force a concept down your throat that you're not familiar with, that really sort of shakes everything that you know to be true because you have been lied to, unfortunately. And, we're all buying into the same circle jerk BS. So we got to end this. Let's raise our elevation here, raise our consciousness. That's kind of what we're about on this program. So the red pill conversation for today has to do with eclipses. It has to do with, do I believe in astrology? So what happens in the Western astrology community in circles is that people will all write these super generic horoscopes that apply to literally every single person on the planet. And then what happens is people say, oh, I like astrology. I'm a Virgo. They say things like that. And, my moon is in the 8th house in Scorpio or whatever BS you want to throw out there. And they run with that. And they use it as, number one, a validating tool as to why they behave the way that they do. So it's like, no, I'm sorry, Susan, you're just a bitch. It's not because you're a Scorpio. It's because you're just a bad person. So that's the first problem that we start to have with people. And then the next thing that happens is that all of these articles are written in such a way that we are misled to believe that this exact event is going to happen on this day, that nothing else is going to happen except for whatever they're telling you is going to happen. And that's crazy. That is truly crazy talk. That becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's where the red pill conversation really needs to come up because, we are holding all of our eggs in one basket, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so we decide we're going to put everything on pause because we're supposed to have a relationship or we're going to get money or, we're going to have some new beautiful, like new age woke thing that's going to happen to us. And so what we do is we decide to just wait around and not do anything. And then what ends up happening is we miss the boat and we become damaged because we expected this one thing to happen and it didn't. Well, that's because talking about an eclipse and writing a horrible scope that applies to literally every person on the planet, that's a single factor analysis. And that's pretty dangerous, to say that you're going to be affected by this one planetary influence when in my work, there are 22 different objects that I consider and 3 different charts. So I have to line all of that up to be able to, say with scientific certainty that this is going to hit you or affect you in some way. And then, the Western astrology communities just try to make it seem like it's this big to-do and that this issue will be highlighted so you can expect that. Well, that's fine. But, I'm always of the belief of the opposition, like, let's ignore that. Let's just live life and let things happen, naturally. And let's see what comes of this. Let's not expect anything along the way and report back to me with your findings. That's empiricism. That's how this works. And people are just misled to believe that, well, because, this eclipse is happening in my 8th house, that there's going to be a big major death and that's going to screw me up and all these other things. And it's going to happen today. And if it doesn't happen today, it will be by the next eclipse cycle. So this is a thing that that people have really been, spouting about, and it just doesn't make sense. I'm very confused by it. And this is honestly what makes astrologers look bad and what makes people leery of astrology, and worse yet, what makes people believe that astrology is a belief system, like Christianity or something, when it's truly just a language like Spanish. That's really all we're doing here. So that's the end of my rant for the red pill conversation for today. But I just wanted everybody to be made aware of the fact that this is the hot garbage that people are talking about. And here's why that system doesn't work. Now,
Wow,
Veretta, were you affected personally yesterday? Was yesterday a really big day for you that completely shook up and ruined your life?
not even a little bit, other than just dealing with a lot of physical pain. There was nothing any different yesterday than the day before and today. So I'm thinking no.
Yeah, see,
Not at all.
and that's what happens. Like my life, I live under a rock. My life is pretty mundane for the most part, and I like it that way because it just works better for me than me going out and creating trouble in the world. So I've really been, working on just whatever it is that's in my domain. And I just take life one day at a time, and we'll just see what comes of it. So to say that, yesterday was going to be this big to do, that's just crazy talk. Like that's Santa Claus kind of stuff that I just don't subscribe to. So I'm glad to hear, Veretta, that, you just had an A-OK day. Nothing major or big really happened that, it wasn't this apocalyptic kind of event that everybody's been talking about. So now other question, because I know we have Halloween coming up in about a week or so. And we will be back with you guys on Saturday at 11 o'clock for a 2-hour program. Veretta, what would you do if I decided to say, hey, Veretta, I want to take you out for Halloween, and I bought these tickets on Groupon, and we're going to go and visit an abandoned psych hospital? Would you do that?
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, I would.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I would. You bet. I am not. See, and this is where my subscription to, oh, that stuff is woo-woo. No, it's not. It's cool to go to. A lot of times when I've visited places that could have some kind of haunts, I very rarely get that opportunity to experience anything because I experience stuff like that on a daily basis wherever I am at. But yes, that for me that would be so exciting.
Okay, that's kind of, I expected the opposite result, that you would have just been so overwhelmed by everybody trying to talk to you that you would have gone crazy.
No, honey, I am more versed and aware of how to deal with that world on, like I said, a daily basis. I am not a newbie that just entered into this realm and doesn't really know what's going on or how to control it or, what they want. That's not me. That's not me. And therefore, yes, that kind of thing for me is exciting. I do find it's fun to venture into stuff like that.
Wow. Okay. So then maybe for your birthday next year, we'll go to like an abandoned prison, and then I'll give you $100 and we can go to the casino and hit the roulette tables, because it's my belief that roulette, even though there is, a minimal strategy involved with it, it's really a psychics game, because you can argue it's all about luck, which is true to an extent, but you see the number before it comes out, and we can do that. And it's something I've worked with and played with for years. So that would be
I
something
would
fun.
love that too.
Yeah, that's all psychic
That for
stuff.
me
We'd
would
probably
also
get
be
thrown out.
Yeah, well, I think that's worth it. That's worth the whirl. I would love to go to a casino as well. So, just things like that for me, because it's as average as anybody else would want. That for me is what's exciting.
Wow. That's good to know. So, quick question though. So, I was thinking about it. We were having the conversation previously that about people who are abusive in relationships, right? That we get stuck in these scenarios that we can't really pull ourselves out of, and and we're going to ignore the fact that you should get yourself out of this before it becomes too late. But what I really want to talk about today is, how do you know that the person that you're with is, let's say, just off their rocker, mentally ill, that there's like some broken wiring that needs to be addressed, versus somebody who is truly possessed, like that we don't know where this is coming from. And, like everybody in their family and friends thinks that this guy is an angel or he's perfect and everything. And then behind the scenes, he's really quite the monster. what's the distinction between somebody who is truly possessed by like a demonic spirit and then becomes abusive versus somebody who's just an asshole?
Well, there's a really fine line because those that would act in a narcissistic, sociopath, or sociopsychotic manner would or could, very much be similar to someone possessed, unless you actually know, like, the type of personality disorders or their characteristic and who they are behind closed doors. Because a lot of times parents, family, everybody on the outside does not know that, little Jimmy is a psycho and he beats his wife on a regular basis. They don't want to believe that. But the reality is there are certain things, and the individual doesn't always know. If they've got demon going on inside, they're not always aware that's happening. And so they're told after the fact, what the hell was that? Why are you all of a sudden being an asshole? And they're like, what's going on? What are you talking about? I didn't do that. Okay, well, then the person was, well, they were channeling. Okay, well, channeling's very fine line there too. But anyway, so they want to be able to know the individual. If they know the individual and they started exhibiting or having disturbing characteristics that would really not be them, that's their first sign, right freaking there. Don't ignore it. Whether it's mental health, behavioral health, or demonic possession, any of those things should be addressed. And then, you want to follow through with where that come from. Because obviously if they're a really good person, they would not typically be possessed unless they had a hitchhiker latch on, or they were in a mindset that lowered their character enough, their energy, their psyche enough that demon could possess. And you see, you have to look at all that as well. The average individual, an average individual that is of the light and or knows how to protect themselves are not going to get possessed. So you got to look at the caliber and the character of the individual that is possessed, find out what was going on, what happened to them, where'd that come from? Have they always done it? Did they just do it? And that will then also give you the armor you need to, if they are possessed, to then go ahead and exercise or convince whatever it is that's hanging on to let go.
Okay, that makes sense. So, like, if you see somebody foaming at the mouth, or perhaps they were married to somebody who practiced black magic in the past, those are going to be like some pretty big red flags, right?
Big red flags. But so if I saw somebody foaming at the mouth, the first thing I'd do would be get them to a hospital. And I would not neglect the fact that it could be something more paranormal, but I'm going to look at their physical health first. And actually, in reality of that, looking at who I am, if I see someone foaming at the mouth, I'm going to feel them. And if they don't feel right and that's not correct, then I'm going to look at their health, and then I'm going to take them to the hospital. But that's few, very few. And I can't say that I've ever seen anybody foaming at the mouth after being possessed. I can't say that. It's sugar in my memory.
Well, I mean, anyway. Some people get so angry that happens, and that's just kind of like...
Now that, yeah, that I've seen happen. Somebody's so mad they start spitting all over everything and everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's... And what's funny is that these people, they're always jerks. And, in comedy, we write that these people always have names like Kevin or Frank or Kyle, just like the total trash people of the universe that nobody wants anything to do with. And it's almost always happening in Florida or Texas or Arizona, one of those kinds of places. It's always really funny. But, it's unfortunate when it happens. And it just kind of makes you wonder, like, how do you get yourself out? Especially when you're dealing with like that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and you really don't know what it's going to be on a given day. It's like you start to wonder, maybe there's something happening behind the scenes that's more than just, medication, or this person is crazy.
Yeah.
So it creates that issue. But the real thing is that I sort of wonder about is, if you're in that type of situation and maybe that really is happening, are we able to how the heck do we get ourselves out of that? Like a cleansing, let's say,
Okay.
like from
Yeah.
afar, like when we're stuck.
Yeah. So when you're in a situation, first of all, you got to look at your physical health. That's your priority, physical health. Are you in physical danger? If you recognize that you are, and let's just say we've stretched it way from codependent relationships, enabling, it's just so far down the line in the mental health category up to, yep, you are in danger. You recognize you are in danger. You got to go. One of the things you want to make sure of is that you are safe wherever you go, because without being safe, you can't start healing your mental health. You can't start cutting the ties, if you will, and, saging the soul so that you can move on and heal. And once you realize you're safe, then you start to take stock in your participation of the situation and understand you got to let it go. Now, I'm going to just quickly flash back to our Ho'oponopono. This is a great time where that comes in, right? So you forgive yourself for whatever it was you think you saw or did or was or became, and you understand that that was a survival mode. That was not really who you were or are. That was a survival mode. Therefore, you can change that and understand that, you may have to account for something that you had to neglect or you abused or they seem to feel unfair or spited. And once that's situated, if you feel you can take care of that and heal yourself at the same time, in your mind, you start to see this individual, you let go. You start to see this individual in the past. Anything as the reference for you will be in your future, therefore you are solo or without that individual. And then you can do a cord cutting ceremony or do whatever ritual you feel you can that will release the bond that or tie that is existent between you at that level of abuse. Now, so say, let's just throw in there, but I got kids in common. I'll have to be part of this person's life. Yeah, I get that. So you have to have that tie, that and only that tie. Nothing more makes you responsible to this individual. So you establish a new tie, a three-way tie, with the bond between the child and the father or the parent or whatever, and you to the child and that cord, not to the other individual. So that way you still have that connection. You have to have contact, possibly communicate with this individual all the time, or you can get agreement thereof, but it's not you directly related to them. Therefore, they can't jerk that thing every time they want, and you can let go anytime you need. The other thing is that you have to give yourself permission to let go and not feel, well, without me, they wouldn't have anybody. Oh, yeah? Okay, well, let them go beat up on a rock for a while and see how far that gets them. Maybe they'll want you if you're the only one in their life, because literally, if you really think they're dependent solely on you, they need to become very appreciative of that. And then we have to look at the reasons that you're together. Most likely it's a contract situation. So if your end of the contract is done, then you can let go. If not, then you have to let go so that you can come back around and fill it. Otherwise, they'll kill you, and there's no way, either mentally or physically, there's no way then you can fill a contract. So when you leave a situation of abuse, you have a cycle that you have to go through to heal. There's a brief situation that you'll need to go on. A lot of external situations also may be thrown in there that will, extend the time frame it's going to take you to heal and let go and move on. But you've got to give yourself permission to let go. You've got to forgive yourself for your participation in the situation. And then once you can do that, you can let go. Once you let go, you can move on.
Well, and the big thing is to address the root cause that's creating the problem, because one of the biggest fallacies in today's world is, with poverty, that if I just had a check for X number of dollars, all of my problems are going to go away. No, that is like so
Yeah.
far from the truth, you have no idea. And unfortunately, we're gaslit to believe that this is true, that we can make all of our, financial woes go away if we just have more money. That's really not the issue. There's a self-help book called Why You're Stuck that I really liked. And the big takeaway from this is do it, finding the root cause of whatever may be going on and addressing that as opposed to all of the other stuff around it. So, like people will often call the show and they'll say, like that they're in financial straits, things are not looking great. What do I do to get a new job that creates more revenue? Well, that's part of it. Sure, I'll go with that. I'll accept, fine. Especially if that's being supported, a new job is being supported by your chart. But, like if you're still shelling out, $200 a month at the dispensary, and then you're also going to pay an obscene cable bill on top of everything else. What is it that you're doing to cut corners to really for your own resourcefulness? Because remember, it's never about the lack of resources. It's about the very straight lack of resourcefulness. People complain, like I might get kicked out of my place, and I don't know what to do. Yet I just spent $350 on a haircut and I look great. Okay, so maybe we need to have a talk about that.
Yeah. And the reality of it is that they don't want to hear that. That's not an option. When people are in dire straits, depending upon who they are and how responsive they will be, one of the first things you have to look at is opening your mindset to something new, because obviously your familiar routine isn't working for you. And like you said, you have to cut corners. If you're used to a $50 latte bill at the end of the week or whatever, or 100, it's real easy to drop a buck or two. Doing those little things of $35 and $20 and $15, that stuff adds up. And then, well, no, I can't not live in this high-rise apartment. I look good in it. I need to. This is where all the people live that are important. Oh, well, okay. Where do they go when they don't live there anymore? It's one of those things where if you don't open your mindset to something different, another thought, a different point of view, anything for reason, then you're probably going to stay stuck in that situation. And that's not, it's not on anybody but you to get out of that, literally.
It reminds me of this, those really terrible episodes of like Dr. Phil and all of those daytime talk shows where they have, some entitled brat who's screaming and, shouting on the TV, and then you tell them that they have to go out and get a job, that mommy's not going to pay them $1,200 for an allowance anymore. And then there's like literally crying and upset and tears and, like almost having a stroke, the fact that they're being forced to be responsible. There's really something to be said in today's universe about doing the right thing and being forced to do that. Like, especially with what we preach here on the show, is that, we can do it your way, or we can do it the hard way. And we would much rather do it your way, because the hard way means that you've been cornered. You've continued to ignore whatever problem is looming over your head. And now it's created some other external response that you now have to respond to. And that's going to force you to do things in a much more difficult situation. It's sort of like, you're being forced to quit smoking because now you have stage 3 lung cancer on top of emphysema and whatever else is going on. And that's so much harder to do today than what it was 15 years ago, when it was still less problematic, or maybe even not a problem at all. So, but the thing that I really want to know that we kind of have to discuss is, like, I think that I need to do X in my life because it's healthy for me, or because I benefit from it, or whatever that may be. But that's just me. Like to the average outside person, like there's not really a problem, let's say. Like there's not really an issue that needs to be addressed or worked on. So what quantifies then, like what gives us the permission to take to expend the energy to go down that track to make that thing work out for us. Like me getting clear now, which is a process that I'm doing. I'm still sort of on the fence about it. I don't know if this is something that I want, but I'm giving it an honest try, because the alternative, which was, the comfort zone that I was in for so long, that just wasn't yielding the results that I was really wanting out of life. And I just realized, okay, so I got to do something different, because truly the definition of insanity is expecting different results by doing the same thing. So because I know this to be true, I figured, okay, so let me try some new stuff here. And I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but we'll do that. But there's always, that reservation in the back of my mind. Do I really need to do that? It's not like I have needles hanging out of my arm. It's not that extreme. But, it's for me anyway, it's something so small that it's something that I'd like to work on, just because it's important to me. And for me, that's really all I need to know. Whereas, like your traditional clinician would think that I'm crazy, or that I'm going off the deep end because I don't need to do these things. And then they run with that and then gaslight me and point me in all these other directions that are distracting.
All right. Well, if you know that the key to your success may be seeing what it's like first, or living with moderation, or whatever key to your success is, it doesn't matter. They don't understand you as a whole. That's where therapists or counselors kind of fall short in what they do, because they've educated themselves through book and through tutor and through a little bit of firsthand knowledge, but very rarely do they look at the person as a whole. When I transpersonal counseling, that's exactly what I do. And so I look at you and I say, I think just trying it for 30 days is going to give you an idea, or you'll know more about yourself than when you did after those 30 days, or whenever it was that you set your goal for. And I feel like that for you will be enough to know what the right answer will be in the long run, or at least attempt to know at that point. So I think for you, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to. You need to see what it will bring you, what that net result will bring you overall, because you're right, what you were doing wasn't working, therefore something had to change. So if this is what you need and it's that easy, yay, so be it.
Well, like I think you get the sense about me that I'm an extremely black and white person, that you either do or you don't do something. And, like having good intent, that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, if you still didn't do it, you failed. That's the way that I look at things. So I have a very polarized worldview, and I don't intend to change that. I'm very happy with that. So where I'm going with this, though, is that I've always poo-pooed on the word try. Like, this is like one of the most sabotaging words in the human psyche, to say that I will try to do this, because, the moment that you say that, you immediately sabotage yourself to say, I mean well, but I'm probably not going to do this because I'm too distracted by the other BS in my life to actually get around to it. So I've always just kind of like trashed people who try things out, because it's like you either do or you don't. So, I mean, I can say you can change that verbiage, if we modify the rhetoric to say something like, I am in the process of working on this, or, like, I am working on this, but it's taking time, that's uplifting, that's empowering language to the psyche. And we think to ourselves, okay, so there's some movement, there's some motion that I have created, and I still want to work in this direction. Whereas, try is on the opposite end of, like, I mean well, but I'm probably not going to do it. I've learned through this whole process here for me is that my version of try very simply means I'm too afraid to do the work, to do the full package here. So I'm going to, I'm just going to give this a test to see how this goes. I don't know if I'm capable of it. And I may fall off the wagon. And if I do, that's okay too. At least I gave it a shot. But I'm going to try here to see if this is going to work for me. So in that sense, it's try doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to do it. It just means I can't give it 100%, and I'm really sort of shaky about the concept. So let me give you what I can, and we'll go from there.
Right. And in that regard, for a lot of people, is enough, because it's more than they were willing to do before, and it's enough. I honestly believe there is no failure in attempt. What the failure is not attempting, and that for me is, well, okay, then stop crying, or go hug a tree, because honestly, you never meant to do anything, or didn't want anything done in the first place.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes from the retail workspace. For me, was that people want to complain and bitch about an issue, and that's all they want to do is to be negative. And if that's your only game is to be negative, then there's the door. I don't have anything else to do with you.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do to assist you in this moment. If you want to complain and then you're receptive to suggestions, and I'm trying to make you a happy customer, and it's not what you want, but you're thinking, okay, maybe I might do that. That sounds okay. And if it doesn't, then there's this other alternative that I can just walk away from. That's something I
Yeah.
can work with. But, if you just want to be negative and for the sake of being negative to focus on the darkness in life, then that's where I check out. So that's sort of like the
Yeah.
bounds those are the bounds where my empathy sort of ends with people, is that I don't really know how to work with people when they're just, when they don't want to hear it, like that they just say like, I'm not going to work with you because I don't want to give out my birth data. That's my personal data. And, and you don't need to know that. And it's like, well, then I'm sorry, you don't get to work with me because this is how this works.
Yeah, I do need to know that, right? It's not a personal preference, it's a necessity.
It's a rule.
And that for people is just too unrealistic to believe they would call you, someone that absolutely needs your birth date and time and place, and not expect to give it.
Yeah, so I mean, it creates issues, with people, and this is the whole thing with behind the Kepler Society and those groups, is the fact that they say, I don't want to give you my birth data to learn my chart because that's too scary, and this is me, and you don't need to know that. So seeing that Uranian astrology is really truly metaphysical ministry at its best. It really is truly the finest in metaphysics that's available. Secret science of spirit is what we do. If you're not willing to learn the spiritual aspect of the work, then why are you even talking to me? Like, this is what I do. Like, why do you want to have a conversation with somebody who is a legitimate metaphysician when you don't want to have those conversations about spirit? I'm sorry, you're just going to have to go back to all of those other astrology organizations where people don't know how to read a chart. Keep deluding yourself with the BS, because this is truth, this is light, and I will hold your feet to the fire. This is just what we do.
Right. Well, and to some degree, after a while, you'll just get to the point to where you'll deliver the message and move on, because honestly, if they don't want to do the work, it's not on you to waste your time. And maybe they will get it and understand what you're hoping they'll to try to do, or they'll get their head wrapped around. I had to get to that point of understanding that, for us, it's just to deliver the message. Sometimes it really isn't for us to pound home what a person needs to hear. And I really allow Spirit, more than anything else, to deliver the message in the tempo they need to. Whereas yours is black and white, and you're like, look, people, I am reading this to you. This is exactly what it says. If you want to fail, don't listen. There's that. Just go on and do what you're going to do.
We were talking last week about, can you change, an outcome of an event in your life based on the chart and how it reads. So here's a great example of that. I was looking at a chart this past week that looked very, very much like mine. And when I broke it down, the chart just was basically a reverse copy of myself. So it was just, whereas my life starts out as excruciatingly difficult and challenging in the beginning, and it gets better with time as I age, like by the time I hit the age of, 40, 45, 50, my life is looking really great. Like my 15 minutes of fame starts later in life, whereas a lot of people get it earlier in life. So then what happens is, like these, hot, beautiful people in high school, by the time they're 40, they're really not looking great. They're probably not making very good life choices. Things just really aren't looking good for them because they're past their prime. This is what happens when you peak too early. This is actually one of the things that's unfortunate about society, is that people are primed to believe, I need to really work on myself hard right now so that I can be the best version of myself. But then what ends up happening, which is an unfortunate consequence or side effect, is that we peak so early that there is no more room for for growth. And that's unfortunate, when we hit that level, because then once you hit your peak, the only way from there is down. So in my life, things are difficult in the beginning, and they get easier as I age. This other chart I was looking at, they had it easy in the beginning, but they get it more difficult as they age. So it's almost, you can almost sort of like start to see like a passing off of the torch in synastry. I won't get into those details because that's a separate discussion. But what I'm trying to say is this other person's chart, like I'm looking at what they're doing for work, and I understand that this is somebody who's in the public eye. They're an actor, they've done movies, they've written, they've worked in, behind the scenes kind of stuff. And, they've got, a moderate amount of success, like people know, it's a household name that people would recognize. I won't get into that. And then it would, I would almost guess that later on in this life, probably when this person turns, somewhere in the range of like 44 to 46, their tragedy strikes them, like a very difficult health issue, like that doesn't look great, like that could be debilitating, that would yank them out of the public eye because now they have to work on their health issues. So, if we're dealing with health issues, we're dealing with a Sun Hades person, which is me. And then also because we're dealing with things like acting, TV production, movies, we've got, some Neptune, Poseidon, Uranus. Those are all going to be those types of planets, which are also very spiritual in nature. So when you break down this other person's life story, you see, okay, so later on in life, they may have some issues with their lungs that may cause a debilitating disease or illness that might cause them to, have to be yanked from whatever lifestyle that they were in before. And it's going to be pretty bad to where they lose everything and they cannot keep the extravagant lifestyle they started to create for themselves. And slowly, everything just starts being taken away to where they don't have very much. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if this person was a client of mine, how would I advise them? Well, now is actually the time, between the next 1 to 3 years would be a really wise time to impart the message. You've got some stuff down the line in the distant future that could be some health issues. So do everything you can to protect your lungs. Don't engage in any activities or behaviors that would endanger or threaten your lung health, because that could become problematic. So I would imagine that just based on the alchemy of those things, for something like smoking in somebody's life, that by redirecting that energy, this person would then probably, I think, start to work more in the creative sense. So they would be doing more in that TV and movie production arena. So we would see more of that, and we would see less of that, damaged lung activity. So when that time comes in life where they start to get beat up a little bit and things aren't looking so hot, then it shifts the narrative to where, I'm looking at something like I'm going to lose everything to where I'm just being damaged right now. And it kind of sucks, but I'm going to take care of myself, as opposed to forcing myself to push forward. Like, I understand that taking a break is okay. A lot of us in today's society are such workaholics, and we're conditioned to believe I have to keep going no matter what. And then what happens is everything falls apart as a result of that. So, in that person's chart, do they avoid the heart attack or the stroke? Not necessarily, but the effect is diminished. It's not as strong or as powerful or, even as awful, just because they have made the choice to, number one, focus on their health issues and protect their lung health. And also to, by doing that, it yanks them from the destructive behaviors and allows their chart to resonate in a more positive light. So the expectation for that manifestation in the native's life is going to be not as extreme. It won't be as damaging as what we would normally expect if they were just running in their own lane without knowing any better. So this is one of the things that we can use astrology for, is advising people, hey, so you have this big thing and this doesn't look great, but you can change it. We can't necessarily change the event itself, but we can make it less awful. We can make this more palatable. So you can make your way through it. And here's the skill set or the knowledge of how that's going to work for you.
Right. And that knowledge is power. So you have choice then to utilize that if you want to.
And so many people, when we're in situations that are new or foreign to us, especially the ones that create change in life, what happens is that we're basically a fish out of water at that point. We don't really have any game plan. We don't know what to do. In psychology, we're basically operating at an extremely primitive level. Like all we can do is instinctual because we don't know any better. Like we don't have the information or resources to be able to create a game plan under these new conditions that are new and changing and different. So when we're in that fish out of water situation and everything is, a primitive response to what's happening in the environment, that is the very, very best that we are capable of in those situations. But astrology can give us something like, so there's X and there's Y, and you can choose. And they're both more or less of the same energy, and you're going to get different results from them. But here's how you can, manifest the things that you're looking to achieve out of life based on your own actions. And that's empowering to people to know that I don't have a game plan here. I have no idea what's going to happen in the future. So let me focus on these other mundane aspects of my life, like taking care of myself or doing creative things or getting out and meeting new people. That these are things that I can do that distract from the other tedium and difficulty in my life. So when you're in that instinctual primitive phase, then you can say, so this may be true, that I don't know what else to do, but I can always work on these other things. I'm going to putz away at my creative work because that brings me joy, and I like that. And I don't know what's going to come of it, but I know that this is an option for me as opposed to, engaging in unhealthy relationships with other people that end up becoming very toxic.
Yeah. Right.
Because that's really the thing about the human experience. That's why we're so resistant to change, is because it's too scary. Like we're comfortable. We're very happy with the status quo for the most part. Let's avoid the political conversation and all of that. But in our own personal lives, the status quo is mostly preferable in almost all cases, just because that's what we know, and that doesn't require anything to really change, and that's great. But when we're asked to do something, like to quit smoking, to get clear, to do whatever it is that's right for you, and you're not really sure about that, then what do I do in exchange? Like how do I redirect the energy? Because now there's this void in my life, and my hands my hands aren't busy, so I'm gonna end up doing all of these crazy things that I have no business getting involved with. And we can read that in a chart. So Beretta, I don't know about you and what you do with your work in channeling, but I would imagine that it's quite similar to what I do with the chart here. That you can give the information of, these are your options. These are the choices that are available to you right now, and this is what will happen if you choose these paths.
Right. And that's more tapping into the psychic realm, and looking at the Akashic records, and as far as what really they are here for. Can they use this for that, movement forward? What does happen? I never tell someone what they should do. I just tell them, these are your choices, or some of your choices. Sometimes there's multiple. And if you choose this one most likely would be the end result. This one would most likely be the end result. And this one would most likely be this end result. You have to decide what end result you really want to go through, or not, and do it your way, totally opposite of whatever it is that I'm being shown you could be going through. Because one of those choices are eventually going to be the path. Whether you choose them today or not, you're going to go down the path that you need to ultimately for your whatever mission it is that you chose to be here. So I can give the sight into option, and they have to make the choice.
So what is it that prevents us from just kind of going out and doing that thing that we really want? Like, what stops me from just going out and jumping into traffic, or going out on a rampage, or just going out and kissing that person that I felt this this tension with for so long? What is it that holds us back? Is that like a higher self kind of thing?
Well, depending upon the situation, it could be a higher self. It could be our lizard brain, knowing that it, isn't something good for us. It could be our ego and not allowing the intention to follow through, and then place blame on something or someone else. There's a lot of reasons that keep us in check when we could move forward. But the biggest fear we don't take a step in, or the biggest reason we don't take a step in any direction is fear. And that is a common denominator for a lot of result. A lot of result is established basically through fear, even if we don't know what that's from.
So then, in your experience, and because I've shared with you, like that, what I can do is if we're in that stasis that we don't really know what's coming next, and then we end up with that, primitive response, I can read your chart and say these are the things that you can focus on, to redirect your energy. What is your experience with guiding people through that primitive, like lizard brain type of part when we don't know what's going to happen next because we've embarked on a change that's new and foreign?
Right. So I tap into the energy, the emotion of the end result. And, I can determine fairly quickly whether they're going to go through a hard time, whether they're going to have success, whether there's a lot of learning ahead of them and they need to really absorb what's going on. And from that direction, I tell them, okay, well, so this is what it looks like. This is what I'm feeling. And I will start to have examples shown to me visually from spirits so that I understand exactly the complexity of whatever situation they're going to, go on. And it very rarely does it vary from the end result. When I've had feedback from people, they've, given me it did happen, or that did happen, or this emotion did take place. This was the story behind it. And they can know, okay, yeah, it may be a little scary. I'm going to tell you right now, it may be a little scary, but that doesn't mean you have to stop, because the end result is great. And if you just let a little bit of scary and see if they're given the prompt that, yep, it's coming a little bit, they're a little more prepared than not walking into a blind situation. Or I can say to them, you know what, you're all up in your head right now. None of what you're fearing is going to happen. And all you have to do is open the knob, turn the knob, do what you need to do to get your foot in the door. That's it. That's all you got to do. That's the only attempt you have to make. Sometimes that's just enough encouragement that people will let go of that little bit of, ledge they're on and think, yeah, I can walk. This is the sidewalk. It's not that scary. I'm okay. And they'll succeed. But really, again, for me, it's an individual process. Although I don't need their birthday, day, time, and place, I do have individual specificity for them, like you do with your chart.
Do the messages that you receive when for that specificity, do they come through in like special color patterns or visuals that are just really unique and specific to that person?
Yeah, all of the above, but the most unique is the energy pattern itself. Each individual has a unique energy pattern, just like we have unique fingerprints. Each individual has a unique pattern. I very rarely remember people or names, but I can remember their energy. And that energy then itself has information on it, attached to it. So I can see that, and it really depends upon the person. I can see that as a symbol, which then has a lot of tentacles that create other symbols responding or in reaction to the first one. Mm-hmm. Some are prism effects, where they just echo out in light, and it gives me an idea of really kind of what person, what level of awareness they're on. And that's just kind of a level of awareness they have. I feel people emotionally, and the more denser people are people that have a less calm, more chaotic. They have a more chaotic, frenzied energy, which means they got a lot going on in their head. They've had a lot going on in their life, and they've got a lot going on emotionally all the time. I'm pretty quick to spot an ADD individual when they're really ADD and not just up in their head thinking a lot or very creative, because that carries a significant pattern, energy pattern. ADD does. So I see things in variable ways. I hear things, and I feel things. So I'm kind of multiverse in my abilities, in that, if someone, well, what kind of psychic are you? Clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient, clairtangent? I can utilize all of the abilities, and I have perfected some to really understand a wide range of awareness, where ESP or psychic or extrasensory is concerned. I am versed in paranormal.
Well, and that's the secret. That's the missing link that nobody knows about. So there's the whole thing in today's culture about the whole trans movement, right? Like that people can, gender flip and all of that sort of thing. But the real trends that nobody's talking about is that, like, you and me, Veretta, we are trans species. We're so far beyond,
Mm-hmm.
like what this physical plane has to offer, that we're just pulling stuff from other places, and that's just what we do. And that is absolutely a version of trans that nobody's talking about, is trans species. Like more than human being. Like we're going beyond it. Like the TNPs in Uranian astrology, trans just very simply means beyond. So beyond Neptune is what that is. So Pluto is an example of a trans-Neptunian planet. People love to do this all the time, by the way, is that they'll try to say, Uranian astrology, it's not real, it doesn't work because you guys use those hypothetical planets that we don't know anything about. Oh, really? Well, Pluto was a hypothetical planet, or it was when it was discovered, right? Like nobody knew what that was. They were scientists were able later to verify it, but Witt discovered Pluto long before anybody else ever even knew that it was around, so, through his own observations. So that in turn just validates what we do here. That people try to poo-poo on it and make that argument that you work with those hypothetical planets. Well, then why are you using Pluto in your work if you want to trash what I do? But that we won't get into that red pill conversation, because it gets really dark.
Well, it does, because everything had to start somewhere. And so, because Uranian astrology has been a very well kept secret, very well hidden, for so long, it's established, it just isn't well known. So you have to start somewhere. And other things have started exactly in the same manner and have not just a moderate but major success. And we may be, identify with it as a society now. So, as far as modernism is concerned, there's no reason that Uranian astrology won't have a success. Because it is more science fact than, you're a Leo and your house is into this and your this is into that. Well, then you're a blah, 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 which could or could not be as far from the truth as possible. And with Uranian astrology being as pinpoint and precise as it can get, it's much easier to validate on the spot versus, well, I'm thinking maybe you're going to have a little problem with your respiratory tract here down the road. Based on what I'm seeing right here, you might want to take care of that. And they pop off with, oh, yeah, my whole family's had that shit in their whole system. I know exactly what that is. You have the ability in your astrology to validate immediately. And then without needing it, because it's science, then that you're on track. And then when you specifically couple your intuition, which has been very well honed, and you can couple that with what you're doing, you're able to go a little deeper and give people more of a hypothetical that may or may not actually be hypothetical, And you may be actually seeing what's going on with them, so that it gives just that much more credence to the whole variety of astrology, of what you do as a science.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that's one of the things why I take so much pride in this work is because it's so much more specific. I mean, Western astrology, when people talk about signs, like I'm a Leo kind of stuff, that's really just trying to use, say something, by using keyword norms to describe the masses. But, it's like what I do, there's one of three things that'll come true. And I can always find that in a chart. Whereas, like, in the Western sense, when people talk about horrible scopes and sun signs and all of that, like, they'll make the argument. So if your horoscope doesn't work, then you need to read the horoscope for your moon sign. And if that doesn't work, then you need to read the one for your rising sign. And if that doesn't work, then you need to read the one for your fourth house. And then it just becomes like, all right, so why don't you just ask me to read the whole goddamn newspaper? Because you apparently don't know what you're doing.
Great.
So,
which is why I never got involved with it to begin with, because I didn't want to know any of that. I had bad taste in my mouth over astrology a long time ago, but until you came along, I really didn't have a lot. There was only one or two places I would go to get any type of information that I felt had any credit. So,
well, I'm honored to know that I've made it into the inner workings of your mind when it comes to that subject.
Yes, absolutely.
So
you are a resource. So.
Well, I do want to thank everybody for joining our show today. We are running out of time. We are going to be changing our time slot for next Wednesday. We will be back with you guys at 10 a.m. And then our next Saturday show will be at 11 o'clock in the morning.
90 seconds.
For a 2-hour slot. We'll be here until 1 p.m. Well, Veretta, as always, it was great to have you on the show. It seems like everybody was at work today, but it's always a pleasure to speak with you and get all of these conversations about life, the universe, and everything.
Yes, always.
All right, remember, guys, for all other things Uranian astrology, be sure to check out eastrologer.tv. And for Veretta, go to verettavision.com. We will catch up with you guys real soon. We'll be back with you guys on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. Thanks, everybody, and we'll catch up with you guys soon.
60 seconds.
Bye-bye.
Good luck and Godspeed.